I have to change locations.
It happens. It happens. We have some time, Lauren, so you do what you've got to do. Thank you for signing on early. It's great to see you. And thank you for inviting coworkers. We're thrilled that, does James go by James or Jim? James Sperry.
Jim.
Jim, perfect.
I won't tell you what I call him. I call him Captain Sperry.
There you go.
Awesome.
He's a great leader. He's a good man.
Wonderful. Well, I love that he took the initiative to sign up after you invited him. He was right on it. I heard from him immediately.
Okay, I'll see you in a second.
Sounds good, Lauren.
Cute dog. And Carrie, I saw at the end, there's an ask for those that aren't Circle members yet, I'm assuming, because I saw that there were some that already are, so I'll thank them for their piece, and
Yep.
and they can reach out to you, or you'll be following up.
I'm going to be putting the giving link right in the chat.
Okay, good.
And then if they have, questions, they can reach out to me. They all have heard from me, so they've been interacting with me to register and to get the Zoom link.
Good.
So they can take care of it tonight, which is plan A.
Yep.
Or they can follow up with me, and then I will, and I'll reach out to anyone who doesn't respond and those who do. So yeah, it's a thank you as well as an invitation again. And some are just here to learn. And so that's why it's more of that soft ask, but boy, this is what allows us to do what we do.
I'm a little nervous. We got Bill Castle. This was his job. This is what he did for his career. So I'm feeling a little nervous there. You got to be honest.
Well, that's what we're going to learn from one another, right? And that's why we're going to set a tone of, we're going to speak from our experience, and we are going to.
You were recording that. Cut that out when you post that.
Pause. It needs to be done, right?
Yeah. Right.
Understandable. Welcome, Bill.
Hello there, Darrell. Hi, Bill Castle. Oh, we can't hear us yet.
He's not ignoring us. He's just getting signed in. And when I registered people, I specifically let them know that if they want to keep their video off because they're having dinner or they're already in their pajamas or something, and they just want to observe, they have our blessing to do that. So
Yeah. That's good.
Signed in. If you haven't had a chance, I'm inviting folks to hover their mouse over their picture, and there are 3 dots in the upper corner. And you can rename yourself with your name and your organization, and we're also going to mute our microphones so that we don't have lots of feedback. I someone's news, we get to hear interesting things.
Lots going on out there in the world. That's for sure.
There sure is.
Lauren, do you know any of these people that have joined us at all?
I do not. I don't think formally, I don't think I've met any of them.
Oh, that's good. Okay, well, this is so fun because you get to meet some wonderful people. Carol Winsky, and I think Carol's in Rochester right now, right? Is that the right visual I'm seeing right there? Yeah, and Carol was a board member and is an EDS graduate and is going to be a board member again.
Congratulations.
Right. Yes, hopefully she says that too.
And then Lauren serves on our advisory board, National Advisory Board for the School of Business.
Yes, and is an alum of Roberts as well. So Pam is also, actually Pam and Bill are both board members, and Wayne McCowan is going to be joining us in October as a new board member. So I guess we really drew out the board members here today. I don't know what's up with that. That's wonderful.
Way to represent.
That's good.
Way to represent. Yeah.
It means a lot to us that you're here.
It does. It really does. It's wonderful.
We are thrilled. And they're the ones who are very well trained to be a little early. Look at that. You've got them trained here. wonderful.
I don't know if we trained them. I think they came prepared on their own.
That was part of what qualified them for the job, right?
That's right. Oh,
That's wonderful. It's wonderful. So yeah, for those who are just signing on, if you are willing to make sure that you have your name up, and if you are willing to also include the organization that you are coming from or that you help to lead or where you serve, and that will give other participants in the class an idea of the context that you are trying to implement these concepts into. So if you have not renamed yourself before, I learned this a few months ago when I was attending a conference, that you can hover your mouse over your photo if you're in gallery view, and there are 3 dots in a blue square in the upper right hand corner, and you can click on those dots and choose rename. You can put your name in with a colon and then the organization. So you can look at mine. I've got my name, Carrie Starr, with Northeastern Seminary. So please feel free to share with us where you're coming in from or what organization you're trying to learn on behalf of. And that will help our special guests have some context of where you're trying to apply this information, and also just lets us get to know one another. So we appreciate that. So feel free to rename yourself with your name, a colon, and the organization you're coming from. And then we are going to mute our microphones so we don't get a lot of feedback, but there will be opportunities for participation for those who would like to engage. And Deana, Doug, and Darrell, feel free to leave your mics unmuted if you want to be greeting folks or saying hello. Please feel free.
thank you. The thing about renaming yourself is if you have a long name, it makes it a problem. You can't write out the full name of your organization ever. It's always going to cut it off. So Porterfield is not the shortest name. I'm just looking around here and thinking, you know, there's a few people. Welcome to everyone. Oh, Heather, good to see you. How are you? And Jessica, I think we've met once before as well. Good to see you. Oh, and my favorite number 7 NF over there, Mike McGinnis. Good to see you too.
I love that you zero in on 2 of the 4 letters when you shared.
Well, let's just call it all out. I mean, you shouldn't tell everybody's story. So I just said a lot about you and I. ENFP 7s right there.
I love it. I love it. And the Sparkmans have joined us. Welcome. Torrance and Laquana, great to have you with us tonight.
Wonderful.
We've got a great crew that are going to be signing on. So we're just going to give a few minutes to let people settle in and get everything connected. If you're just joining us, we invite you to rename yourself with your full name and then the organization that you work with or for. If you are just here to learn for your own personal enrichment, don't feel obligated. Or if you're the president of 2 organizations and it doesn't fit, no, Deana even fit them both because she just had to go with abbreviations. I think it's the Porterfield and that you're the president of 2 organizations, Deana. That makes it challenging.
Yeah, it's the long last name. Let's just be honest.
I just remember being very grateful that my last name still started with an S so that I could like keep my initials the same. What was your former last name? Garrett? Garrett.
Shorter, solid. No one ever said like, you know, Potterfeld or, you know, any of those weird names, you know, because I already got a problem with my first name. Let's just be honest.
Right.
You're never going to get the first name right. So you really like it when the last name is easy. So
no, I kind of like the sound of Deana Porterfield.
Thank you, Douglas. And the truth is, I will answer to that, and probably not correct you. You know, 54 years. I stopped correcting a long time ago.
Oh,
so yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those socially acceptable things that we do, right?
It is. People feel really bad when you correct them. You know.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm trying to make them feel good.
There you go.
Hi, Debbie. Debbie White, I see you down there too. Hello. Yeah, very fun.
So most of us have Our mic's muted. Well done. Great, great listening. You're a really good class because you're already following instructions so well. I'm really pleased. So I think we still might have people signing on, but I'm just gonna kind of set the stage a little bit and say that we know, one, that this is dinner time. So if you are snacking or drinking your coffee, that is okay. You know, some of us are really great at being professional in our Zoom environments, and we just want you to know that even though this is a mini class, that we want you to be comfortable. We know it's the evening, so if you're snacking or you have something to drink, it's fine. If you are in your PJs and you need to leave your video muted, we're not going to judge. If you have a small child that climbs up into your lap or a furry friend, we're actually going to really enjoy that. So please don't shoo them away or be embarrassed, because we're going to thoroughly love getting to see those little people or those furry friends. Thank you, Carol, for demonstrating. I really appreciate that. Like Heather, I'm really hoping that one of your kids shows up. So I'm just putting in my request right now that I want to see little people. If someone busts into mine, it will be a big person and you might be scared. So I'm actually in a room where all the doors are locked because I don't want that to happen. But really, please don't be embarrassed. Don't feel like that's inappropriate. It's totally fine. This is a learning environment. We hope that we have some, neat experiences this evening. There are going to be opportunities to participate. No one is going to be put on the spot to participate if you don't want to. So please breathe a sigh of relief. There's no quizzes tonight and there's no homework. So you will not be graded, but we do want this to be a learning opportunity. So we might still have folks that hop on, but in the meantime, I'm going to introduce my coworker and the Dean and Vice President of Northeastern Seminary, Doug Cullum, who is going to open our time with prayer.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time this evening to come to this mini class, and we're delighted that you are here. I'd like us to begin with a word of prayer, so let us bow. Gracious and loving God, thank you for the topic tonight and the opportunity to share together in this room and to gain insights from each other. Lord, we ask your presence here to help us to realize not only is this important because it's a strategy for working in our world, but it's important for who we are and how we are helped by expanding our understanding of those people because of our narrowness of our experience, are in the category of other. And we pray that our boundaries might be expanded and extended. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Yeah.
Doug, thank you so much for getting us started. All right, so I'm just going to remind everyone that we are going to keep our mics muted and our video on if we feel comfortable. And if we don't, that's okay. And we might have people, I know we had folks too that felt like, oh, I might be able to pop on for a while. I have an earlier meeting. So we're going to be gracious if people are coming in and out too. So let's just keep that in mind. I do want to give us a chance to get to know one another. So I am going to invite people to introduce themselves. Here's what I would love for you to share, if you are comfortable, is your name, the organization where you work or have worked that you might want to apply this information tonight. And then I'd love for you to think about this COVID season that we all find ourselves in. What is a new practice that has become part of your COVID life that you actually would really like to take beyond COVID and really make kind of a permanent part of who you are and what you do? And so what's going to happen is, if you are comfortable introducing yourself and sharing that, I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself, and that'll kind of signal to me. So know that I'm going to start by calling on our three special guests. So after our three special guests share, feel free to unmute your mic, and that will signal to me to call on you. I will not be calling on you otherwise, because I don't want to put you on the spot. So I am going to start with our president, the president of Northeastern and Roberts Wesleyan College, Deana Porterfield.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am the president of Robertson Northeastern, and I am excited to be here this evening with you to just have a great conversation and learn myself as I listen to my colleagues and to you, and then share some of my own journey. One of the practices that I picked up, and this is going to sound silly, but I was big into audiobooks, but one of the reasons I was big into audiobooks originally before the pandemic was because I traveled a lot, either in the car, on a plane. And so all of a sudden when the pandemic hit, I stopped listening to the books. And so I picked up actual novels, and I actually started reading I'll just say some meaningless novels during the pandemic. And it was one of the best gifts that I could have given myself because I needed to get my mind out of the day-to-day decisions that we were making and all the changes that were coming because of the pandemic. So I found reading of hard copy books.
That is awesome. Anyone else? They got into audiobooks? Was that what anyone else going to share? You know, we're going to jump to you, Heather. If you were, do you want to introduce yourself now, or you want me to come back to you later? You can do like one of these if you want me to come back later.
Sure, I can introduce myself. Hi, I'm Heather Farrow. I am an alumni of Roberts, and I currently live in Toronto, Canada, working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and I work in the risk management space. So this topic tonight is very interesting to me because I work with very diverse teams from all over the world, live in a very diverse city, and and also I have 2 kids, so really started to have conversations around diversity too. I guess one thing that a lot of things have changed for me coming back to work during a pandemic. I love working from home. It's been really fabulous to have my kids close by. But one thing that's been very unique too is having the opportunity truly to pray at work. So when my husband and I are struggling with something or a situation, being able to pray together and pray through that. So I've kind of found that, you know, finding that partnership at work is important too, and someone you can trust and share, and that has your same faith system is something I'm going to look forward to when I'm back in the office someday.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Heather. It's great to have you with us. And I love that, you know, Heather shared with me that one of the recent clients they were trying to acquire actually chose their firm because of the diversity that they saw. Right? Really neat. So
that's right. Yeah, we had gone through a selection. I think my video might have muted, but yeah, we had just gone through a recent RFP, won some business, and literally in front of 50 people all around the world, the key buyer literally told everyone, I chose this team not only because they had the credibility to do the work, but because they brought forth a diverse team from not only a gender perspective, from backgrounds. And she said, even, you know, we're all on video, and she said, listen to them. They all have different accents from all around the world. So, you know, it really showed that it matters, you know, in all situations and work too, and people pay attention to that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Heather. All right, I'm going to move up to Mr. Darrell Bell, our Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Northeastern Seminary and Roberts Wesleyan College. So, Darrell, tell us a little bit about what's something new in your life during this COVID season that you want to take forward into life, whatever it looks like beyond.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you all for being a part of it. I would have to say the one biggest thing that it's like you're forced into this space of having to sit still. You know, life is always moving, and the governor says, stay at home. So what do I do with myself? And I really looked at all of the people that I think about on a day-to-day basis. You know, you tend to focus on people that are in your immediate world. And what I learned is there's so many people that I just don't have time to reach out to. So rekindling relationships has been just so critical for me during this time, to just reach out to people that I just haven't had time. And I've learned that, you know, tomorrow's not promised. So to be more intentional about making time for rekindling those relationships. So I think that's been a real blessing to me, is just catching up with people I just haven't talked to in such a long time, and just being able to share memories and laugh. And just enjoy those times. So that's one thing I'm going to be very intentional about moving forward, even if it's just a text message to somebody saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, and you go back and forth a little bit. I think that's just so critical.
Yeah, I was going to say, you stole mine. I think that's like a similar, I feel like my world has shrunk a little bit. And that's been a really positive thing, because when we had to come home, it was sort of like, what's most important to you and who are those key people that you're going to stay in touch with. And now that things are opening up, trying to keep that intentionality about building those relationships and keeping those priorities. Well, Darrell, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How about you, Mr. Doug Cullum, Reverend Doctor?
Sure. Thank you, Carrie. And again, thanks everybody for being here tonight. It's a delight to have you. As Carrie said, I serve as Vice President and Dean at the seminary, and I've been here at Roberts and Northeastern since 1994. In fact, right smack in the middle of my screen, I don't know how yours is laid out, is Dr. Wayne McCowan, who's our founding dean at the seminary. He's the guy who hired me. So it's his fault if it's not going well. But it's great to be here, and thank you, Wayne, for joining us tonight. COVID practices that have come new. So, you know, I'll say three things in quick succession. One, I love my short commute. It's awesome. And that short commute has saved enough time in my life that I've started bicycling. So about every other day, I ride for about an hour and 15 minutes. And it is pretty awesome. And it's great. This old body needs that exercise. And so it's been really good. And then the third thing is, you know, I've spent more time with my wife since March than I have in 30 years, I think,
That's
on a
beautiful.
daily basis. So I'm going to try to figure that out, how to keep that going. I'm not sure how that'll work, but I hope it does.
The fact that you like that is a really good sign, Doug, because, you know,
Well,
some people.
I really like her, so it's great.
It's helpful. It's helpful. Yeah. Yes. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So for those who have just joined, we're kind of opening up by getting to know one another a little bit, those of us who would feel comfortable, by sharing who we are, where we serve, or what organization we'd like to take this knowledge back to. And we're just sharing a COVID practice that's something that's become part of your life that you actually want to keep as a priority, as maybe we, you know, kind of exit this season, whenever that might be. And so if you're willing to share, if you would unmute your microphone, that says to me that you are willing for me to call on you, because I don't want to put you on the spot. And I see that Daisy is unmuted. So Daisy, are you willing to share, or did you just happen to unmute?
No, I unmuted, but thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for hosting this. This is wonderful. I think for me, one of the things that I've learned is two things, actually, I should say, is back in March, my husband and I were, I don't want to use the word stuck, but we were here, and we were both learning how to Zoom. And it's kind of funny. One of the things that I had to tell him was, okay, you are now on a camera, and I know that you have your shirt and tie because he's in sales, but please do not get up because you have shorts on. So they're going to see you. And he's like, oh, I never thought of that. I said, exactly. So please be careful with your camera. But and we've had some humorous moments because of Zoom. So I thought it was kind of funny. For me, I think it's, I think I heard some of you say to be more intentional, more present. I've had the opportunity, like Doug, to just get back to my walking. I used to walk a lot, and now I've been back walking, and I enjoy that. And I'm finding myself that I'm not rushing in the morning to get into that commute into downtown, and just I feel like sometimes like a hamster in that little wheel that they go through all day long. And being able to just stay home now. I stay home about twice a week. I still go downtown to City Hall for a couple times for meetings, but having to stay home and enjoy my home. I mean, it's a place where I haven't had a chance to be here, and just actually also put around and get into, I've been wanting to get into a Bible study in the book of Judges. And I don't know what I was thinking, because I didn't realize there were that many judges and all the different, and the son of this and the son of that. But I actually found a couple of good Bible studies online, and a couple of books. So I've been deep diving into the book of Judges and sharing that with my daughter who lives in Jersey. So I've enjoyed that. So that's kind of what I've been doing different. So thank you for inviting me, Carrie. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you here, Daisy. And, you know, when you study the Book of Judges, then you get to meet Deborah, and she's one of my heroes. So I hope you're enjoying that.
I am.
Thank you. I see that Carol has unmuted. Carol, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Carol Wensky, and I'm looking at some of my professors, my previous professors. My background, I'm a retired chaplain from Unity Hospital, and of course, Wayne McGowan and Doug Cullum were two of my wonderful professors, and I came in through Northeastern Seminary and came to love Roberts Wesleyan College and have served on the board in the past, and I'm going back on the board again. So, you know, grateful to be here with all of you and to see so many faces I've missed. Another wonderful thing about Zoom, you know, that we're together even though we're apart. So God finds ways where there seems to be no way, and here we all are. So one of the big things that has changed for me is when COVID started, I found that I was waking up every morning, turning the television set on to find out the new whatever was going on with COVID. And then, oh my gosh, I had to get on again at 7 o'clock because I had to find out what happened in the few hours between my morning COVID orientation and my evening one, and I would be in this state of unrest, is putting it mildly.
Yes.
And then we'll get into all the other things that I don't need to tell anybody who's had done the same thing. So I was very intentional about starting my morning instead, getting up and going outside and walking. There's a golf course around where I live. And I mean, I'm up at 5, but I would do my devotionals, but then I would walk out the door at 6 o'clock, and I put my Pandora on in my headset, and I listen to Fernando Ortega radio, which is just incredible, and Natalie Grant and Bebo Norman, some incredible artists that spoke into me while I'm walking, looking at God's beautiful creation. And all of a sudden I get reminded in my morning who's in charge and who's looking out over everything and who created all of this. And where nothing could change in what I'd watch in the morning and watch at night, starting my day like that is a whole other experience that I keep doing daily. And then I started in the evening riding my bike, just like that. I mean, at 7 o'clock. So that what a difference that has made, and I've continued that. And it's, you know, if I get on a week later, I haven't really missed anything because it's Groundhog's Day every day with COVID. So it feeds my soul. So I highly recommend it. And I'm just seeing Darlene McGowan, who was also one of my professors, and I just see her now. So hello. So good to see you.
Yes, welcome, Darlene. We're so glad that you and Wayne are both with us tonight. I love the sharing of screens. I see, you know, Torrance and Laquana sharing, and Wayne and Darlene sharing. And so, you know, if you have a partner lurking around and they want to, you know, jump on, know that they're welcome. So let's see. So I see that Pam is unmuted. Pam, would you like to introduce yourself and share?
Sure. I'm Pam Raymond, and I'm with the Genesis Conference of the Free Methodist Denomination. And I think probably the practice that has started during COVID that I'd like to continue is because of the stress of leading in the midst of a highly anxious time. I began to, every night when I crawl into bed now, I take time to just stop and be grateful for the day and look back on the things I'm grateful, and that helps me sort of put the day in perspective and sleep. So.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm so glad that that's been a helpful practice. And yes, I recommend taking that into the future. Malik, I see you're unmuted. Are you willing to introduce yourself? I just want to make, some people might just be unmuted because, you know, whatever. Go for it, sir.
Hey, Carrie. Malik Dares, class of 2018 at Roberts Wesleyan. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces. I missed a lot of the earlier instructions, so sorry if this is already said, but the COVID practice I'd probably take away is just not taking anything for granted, realizing how blessed I am, because I just miss seeing my family whenever I wanted to, or going out to eat with friends, or, traveling out to catch a game at Roberts or whatever the case was. And now it's just, I don't know if that's going to happen again or when it is or how it's going to be. So just not taking anything for granted, I'd say.
Oh, that's a huge one. Thank you. Malik, we're so glad you're here. It's great to see you, and thank you for sharing with us.
No problem.
Let's see, Mr. Andrew Hugos, I see you are unmuted. Are you willing to introduce yourself, or do you want to remain a fly on the wall? Or he might be frozen, or that he's.
I can. My internet connection isn't that good. I'm out here in the hinterland.
And I've heard you've done a lot of biking today, sir. Biking is a theme for our evening.
Yeah, well, it's all part of celebrating 51 years ago today. I was watching Jimi Hendrix live, rolling out the Star Spangled Banner. And
Woodstock, right?
People forget African Americans. Pardon me?
Go ahead. I
think that was the name of it, yeah. But it was actually the Aquarian Music Art Festival. But people forget the leading role that African Americans played in that festival. Richie Havens opened, Sly and the Family Stone rocked the house, or the meadow, and Jimi Hendrix closed. So, I look forward to the time when we can all be together again, much as I love Zoom.
Well, Andy, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for reminding us of that. And now you're making me really miss concerts, which is, one of those things that I think, when is that ever going to happen again? I don't know, but it makes me sad. So we're thrilled you're here, Andy. Thank you for joining us.
It's easy to tell the difference in real life, which God created, and virtual reality, which we created with our own minds. And, we deserve some credit for that.
Yeah, we did all right. Not the same, but Torrance and Laquana, I see that you are unmuted. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good evening. My name is Laquana, and I'm excited to join you. My place of employment that I represent is both MCC as an adjunct professor. I teach nutrition there, and probably a couple of other COS classes, and mainly nutrition, COS, and other things. Also, I teach, or not teach, but I serve at the Urban League of Rochester. So I'm a new employee there as the senior counselor for a program called Youth Build. So I'm excited about that new role and trying to help students who have dropped out of high school, ages 18 to 24, and maybe get them back on track to a better, brighter future. And my COVID practice is, I think, just utilizing kind of what Daisy has said. And actually, I've met Daisy several times. She may not remember, but take my backyard, just enjoy my backyard. I haven't cooked in my house, but I've cooked on the grill almost every single day. Maybe a handful of times I actually turn my stove and oven on. So I've just enjoyed my own backyard and eating healthier due to grilled foods and vegetables. And
that's wonderful. That's fantastic. How about you, Mr. Torrance?
Hello, my name is Torrance Sparkman. I'm an associate professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, also on the advisory board at the seminary, Northeastern Seminary. I think for me, my experience has been similar in terms of COVID practice. One of the things I've been able to do is kind of calm down the beginning of my day. And that has included both my devotion and also exercise. And those two things now are things that if I get away from them, I know I'm going to be in trouble. And so I think, making these practices more permanent over these past few months has really benefited my blood pressure and also my health. So going forward, I hope to continue with those things.
We hope so too. We want you with us a long time, Torrance. And
I just want to brag on him a little bit. He he is also writing sermons, no church to preach at, but he's writing sermons on a more regular basis. Doug, you might appreciate that, but as a way to just keep that skill going right now. And I'm really excited about that giftedness God has given him during this season to keep that going.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for bragging on him, Laquana. We want to hear that. And Torrance taught a class for us this past summer too. So thank you, Torrance, for serving us in so many ways. What a great support you and Laquana have been. I'm looking around the room here to see we're about ready to get and jump into our content. But if there's someone else who would like, I see Gail's got her microphone ready to go. So Gail, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gail Schlosser. I'm in Buffalo, actually. I'm a missionary with Pioneers, but I partner with Jericho Road Community Health Center here in Buffalo, and also the Buffalo Urban Mission Partnership, which is a leadership training program for young people to spend a year in the city. So involved in a variety of things. My focus for many years has been on the Muslim community, helping Christians to understand Muslims and Muslims to understand Christians. So, but thanks for the invitation to be involved. I've dug into gardening this COVID time, so I've been learning a lot about what it means to cultivate here in my little backyard. So that's been a joy. But thanks for the invitation. It's good to be with you all.
It's great to have you here, Gail. And yeah, my gardens have never looked better. It's really nice being able to give them some attention. And then my husband started growing vegetables. He's really proud of himself. So I'm thrilled. He needs to accomplish. So it's really exciting that he can get something that he grew out of the earth himself. It's really exciting. Jessica, I see you've got your microphone unmuted. Please introduce yourself.
I do. I'll keep it quick. I know we're short on time. I'm Jessica Savage. I'm from Dixon Schwabel. I am actually really pleased to be here and was happy to have the invitation forwarded along from Lauren Dixon, and also really glad to see Mike McGinnis here too. That feels terrific. Mike and I are collaborating on the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within our organization. So it feels really good to both be part of this with all of you tonight. Thank you. And my COVID practice has been writing notes, writing letters, old-fashioned mail to people in my life, my colleagues and my loved ones, because that's to get a piece of happy mail feels good. So that's been my practice, and I will hopefully continue with it.
Oh, I love that, Jessica. I love that. That's a new one for me too. I love to write notes and letters, and was raised writing thank you notes, and we've kind of lost that practice as a society, right? So that's beautiful. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for the work that you and Mike are both doing at Dixon and Schwabel to, address this. I'm looking around. I see the McCowans are unmuted. Go for it, McCowan family.
I think probably like most of you, I've spent a lot of time in Zoom meetings during this COVID pandemic, and also YouTube, watching on virtual worship services and the like, and I expect that probably will continue.
Probably at least for a while. Darlene, would you like to add anything?
We've been really involved in working in our yard and getting things in perfect order.
A fellow gardener.
So come and visit.
Okay, well.
Come and visit.
To the backyard, to the backyard.
Okay, well, you're going to have 25 people in your yard tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to that.
That'd be good.
That would be
That'd
good.
be good.
You'd be welcome.
We're lonesome for 25 friends.
Oh, I would be thrilled if 25 people showed up in my yard right now. I am missing people. So, well, I'm glad to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. I see Mike's got his mic unmuted, so introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Mike McGinnis. I'm a class of 2011 grad. I feel like I've met at least half of you at some point around here. I work with Jess. One of my favorite parts about Jess is that if you're ever in the office with her, it's gonna take some time to get back there, but if you're ever in the office with her, you'll see her literally sprinting around the office like every day, so that's pretty great. As far as the COVID practice, for me, my favorite thing has been something, I don't know if it'll continue, we'll see if it continues or not, but it's these virtual online author book club things. And so you get an author who shows up literally in a Zoom meeting, just like, it's this, but with like some of your favorite authors, and you just talk to them. That's been awesome. And it's based out of a bookstore in like Austin, Texas. So if that continues, I'd be all for it.
That's awesome. That sounded so fun when you shared that with me. I was like, yes, I gotta find that, get involved with that. Yeah, there are definitely, I mean, we're all being challenged in a lot of new ways, but there are many benefits from this time that I think if we have our eyes open and our attitudes are positive about it, and I think increased awareness of the need to have the discussion that we're having tonight is one of the positive fruits of this COVID season. And so I'm thrilled for all of you to take time at the end of a day where you may have been staring at a screen like this all day long for work. Thank you for spending some time with us. What I'd like to do now is kind of transition, and I have a few questions prepared that I'm going to ask our special guests to share and reflect. And I want to invite folks, you know, someone might say something and you just are like, yes, I love that, or I've seen that. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat. We're not going to interrupt our special guests, but if you want to give feedback or a thought, or you have a question that you might want expounded upon, feel free to drop that in there just so that you can, you know, remain involved. I appreciate the discussion that we're having. So I'm going to jump right in and just start by asking our special guests, you know, why is diversity critical to organizational success? Kind of the theme question for the night. What's the big why? Maybe Deana, you can kick us off.
Sure. So I was doing some thinking in preparation for this, and I have a few thoughts, and I want to start with some thoughts that are really out there, and you can find this in research and what people are finding related to diverse workplace environments. And so, you know, it's increased productivity. I'm gonna give you like the technical things, right? It's increased productivity. Diversity matters because you can have more productive team. You can have improved creativity on your team because people bring different ideas and different thought processes and different perspectives. Diversity can improve employee turnover. And that's something that I think people don't think about. But if you're in a diverse workforce and a diverse workforce that values the differences of each person, it makes for a better work environment. It can improve your company reputation. It can bring a wider range of skills to your environment. It can improve cultural insights. And then one research fact that I found was that it actually can increase profits within your organization. So if your organization is driven by profit, a diverse workplace can help that. But I thought, with all the lists of what that is, what would I also say as president of Northeastern Seminary and Roberts Wesleyan College? And that is that diversity is an expression of God's love, of who He is, and His boundless creativity. That is the reality of why we care so much about this, that we want to reflect God's image. We want to reflect the heart of God and who He is in our culture, in our communities, and especially in our workplace. But we know that diversity, and that is ethnic diversity as well as gender diversity, really makes a difference around the table in the conversation. So it's why it matters to me. It's been something that I've learned over my own journey professionally, and worked at organizations that have been committed to making sure that Christian community reflects the image of God.
Yes, and I think I so admire seeing you live that out, Deana. I know that from you, those are not just words, but I've seen you make decisions that reflect that commitment, and I really value that. So thank you for the way you do that. Darrell, would you share your perspective on why diversity is critical to organizational success? What would you add?
That's a hard one to follow up on. I mean, President Porterfield pretty much nailed all of my bullet points, but I think that the one thing that I would add to that is that it really does allow for us to promote individuality. You know, we are all individuals in God's image, and, you know, like President Porterfield said, you know, the different skill sets that we bring to the table, it really is, it's a melting pot of just different thinking. that really allows for you to fill different gaps and blind spots that you have whenever you're dealing with, problem solving, So I think that what President Porterfield is spot on, but the one thing that I would add is that it really does allow for us to just promote who we are as individuals in the different experiences that we've had in life, to bring those to the table.
And to know that they're valuable, right? They're needed. When we have people groups who are missing, we are missing out on their perspective. And I love one of the things that Deana talked about with creativity, right? Creativity comes from seeing those different perspectives, and our different life experiences are going to foster those creative solutions. So thank you, Darrell. And
yeah, especially at places like Roberts and Northeastern, we're here to serve, right? So it's important for us to truly understand who are we serving, So if you have diverse thought processes at the table, then that allows for you to really tap into the people that you're serving as well.
Right. Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much, Darrell. My next question, so we know it's critical. How do we make it a priority at our organization? Doug, maybe you can get us started with that one. How do we make it a priority? How do we make diversity a priority in our organization?
Well, I'll jump in a little bit, and maybe others can add to it. But, sort of tied to what you were just asking is that, diversity and the whole notion of what it means to be human, it needs to be central, not peripheral. And what I mean by that is that diversity isn't just another strategy or tactic. It is not a means to get something else. I think that's critical. It's another way to say making it a priority. See, but it's a truly priority. It's not a means to something else. It is about the core thing about what we want to be as an organization. So, in the cases of Roberts Wilson College and Northeastern Seminary, we do this from a theological and philosophical commitment, but it doesn't really matter if an organization is Christian or religious or not. It needs to be a missional and philosophical commitment of the organization that the fullness of humanity must be represented. And so how do we do it? First of all, you have to think about whether it's actually central or not. And if you're using it as a means to get something else done, it's manipulative. It is actually the opposite of inclusion and respect. And so unless we do the soul searching, heart searching about whether this is really important to who we are and the kind of organization we want to be, it is really simply another way to help the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's not real diversity. That's not what it means to be human. And so, I could say more if you think it's important at some point about why from the perspective of Northeastern Seminary, a philosophical and theological grounding in that is grounded. It's grounded at the very central core of our faith about what it means to be human. And not what it means to be Christian.
Right.
You can just strike the Christian notion right out of it. It's about what it means to be human. And so I'll stop there, but we can talk more about that. And for the founder of Northeastern Seminary and Roberts Wilson College, this is it's a reflective of God's creative intention for humanity. And as long as we have organizations and practices that fail to at least attempt to approximate God's creative intention,
right,
then we are functioning as in ways that are less than what it means to be fully human. So
that's
awesome.
Awesome.
Enough for now, I think.
That's great. Preach on, preacher. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Doug, for sharing that perspective, because it really is about our humanity. And, and I think of what you said at the beginning about how if it's just a tactic, if it's just a strategy, you feel used when you're on the other end of it. As a woman who has at times been asked to be part of a board or a group or a task force because we need a woman, it has the opposite effect. You know, it's not affirming and encouraging to be a token representative, as opposed to being truly valued for the unique perspective that you bring, that Darrell was sharing about. That's a very different perspective when there's an intentional welcoming because we recognize the need for your presence, because we value what, you know, you uniquely bring, as opposed to we want to check a box, or yeah, this is just a strategy.
Could I jump in there, Madam Moderator?
Go for it, Andy.
I had the experience of living in a strictly segregated town in Texas when I was growing up. And I remember we once had an African-American gentleman in our house doing, you know, improvements and rewiring the house. And at lunchtime, my mother asked him if he would like to join her for lunch. And he said he had never been asked by a white person to join them in any house that he was working with. Now, it turned out he was one of the leaders of the Black community in our town, and he arranged for my mother to substitute teach at the Black high school, because it was still segregated at that time. And I'll always remember that because of her intentionality. And, you know, I don't think that anybody would disagree if I said white people have been a little complacent in that regard. And, you know, the church's record, we had over 100 churches in our town, but we didn't really know each other. And so I would put it that way, that as human beings, and I think Doug put it beautifully, yes, we're Christians, but we're also human beings, and that's how we connect with each other. It would be nice if we could get to know each other better.
Yeah, that's how we bring that change, right? Is to truly build relationships and truly care and value one another. So thank you for sharing that story, Andrew. I appreciate it. Malik, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to add something there?
Yes, to what you said about checking the box, I feel like organizations kind of like congratulate themselves or pat themselves in the back when they do hire a minority. Instead of doing that, it should make them feel more comfortable and, you know, get more acquainted with the organization and show them how they can thrive and be successful there, instead of saying, well, we hired one, or the person in that position before you was African American, or whatever the case is.
Right, now we're done and we're going to move on. I love that. Yeah, and how do you help me succeed here too? Because the next question I have is, you know, what are some practical steps to increase inclusion? And Malik, I think I think Andy gave us one in saying, like, care, actually care and get to know one another. And Malik, I love that you said, like, help me understand this new environment and how I succeed here as well. Like, recognize that this is different, and help me feel at home and make me feel truly welcome. So thank you for sharing that perspective. So this is the next question for our you know, special guests. What are those practical steps to increase inclusion? So Darrell, should I let you go first on this one so that the president doesn't steal your ideas? I'm throwing you one here. What are some—
You should let me go first, because I'm going to give her kudos, because one of the points that I have is being intentional is critical. Like, you have to be intentional. There's a lot of people that talk about diversity, but how many people are actually making things happen and holding people accountable to their expectations? So leadership has to be reflective of diversity and inclusion. And I have to give kudos to President Porterfield for bringing me on board and really, you know, closing the gap. You know, 150 some years that the college was open, and I'm the first minority administrator. So being intentional and knowing that it's a problem, and then, you know, taking the steps to make change. And then, you know, really it starts from the top down, making sure that leadership is better equipped to understand the essence of what diversity and inclusion really is. You know, there's so many people that, because of their life experiences or whatever else, they're not really equipped to deal with diversity. So it's really easy for people to put it on the back burner and not to deal with it and do what they're most comfortable with, right?
Right.
So I will say that those are probably my biggest things that I'd like to share and let President Porterfield jump in.
Thank you, Darrell. Go for it, Deana.
So Carrie, I'm going to go back one question and then kind of go forward and blend them together if you're okay.
Absolutely.
I absolutely, I love when Doug Cullum talks. I mean, don't you just love, I mean, he just takes it all and puts it all in this space that you just want to write down and requote all the time. That's, I mean, I just feel that even in a regular work day. And so I love how he talked about what diversity means and that it means to be fully human. But I guess in order to make diversity a priority of your organization, you're going to have to put some goals out there too. That's what I would say. And because you have to begin to make change and trying to convince people to understand philosophically what it means, you can help that by making sure that you're creating a diverse workforce and a diverse environment. And so the conversations that we have, and again, we have a long way to go at Robertson Northeastern, but the conversations we have, because we've been intentional about beginning to diversify our faculty and staff, are completely different conversations than we would have had before we did that. And so I think there are some things that we have to make a priority. You know, the fact is it means changing policies and being open to understanding where you might have barriers that push against a diverse workforce. And so those are places usually like hiring, and in our case, admission into a college or the seminary, what your promotion ranks look like, how people can move up, how you rank them, how you evaluate them, what their job descriptions look like. All of those are policies and procedures and pieces that you need to look at organizationally. I wrote down, you know, what are some practical steps to increase your inclusion and your diversity in your organization, besides policies and hiring and those pieces that I just mentioned. And I'll speak candidly here, and you may or may not agree with what I'm going to say, but when I arrived at Robertson Northeastern, we are blessed with a diverse student body. At the seminary, it's unbelievable. It reflects the kingdom of God in ethnic diversity and gender and denominational diversity and age diversity. I mean, here we have on the west side of Rochester, this amazing seminary with such diversity and similar diversity in our adult programs at the college, and a little less at the traditional undergrad. But our numbers were reflecting close to 40% of a diverse student body. And when we looked at our faculty and staff, we were at 6%. So I know it's not about numbers, but you have to put out a claim and you have to say, this is where we are headed. And so we launched a hiring task force on diversity and took a look at how we were doing our searches. And we still have to remind ourselves, by the way, how to do it, and not to just hire right away. We have to be very intentional to make sure that every search committee has diversity on it, which when I tell you there's 6%, that means Darrell serves on a lot of search committees, unfortunately. And the few people that are on the community serve on a lot. They do a lot of extra work, and I'm sorry about that. And that we're going to hold positions open until we have given access to that search so that we can then make the right decision. And there is pushback on that. There was pushback just to begin to move from 6 to 10%, which isn't even reflective of our student body, and then to keep going. So I think we have to be intentional about those pieces. Another intentional thing, especially if you're at a church or you're a leader that can put people on stage, you need to ask the question every time, who's reflected on that stage and what does that stage look like? Who's the voices that we are hearing? And, you know, I remember initially when I came, you know, people weren't sure what I was really asking, but now it just happens. It's part of what we know, that we're going to diversify and make sure that we reflect not just the community we're a part of, but even where we aspire to be, that we want God to be represented in a very diverse workplace that reflects who he is and his great diversity of the kingdom. So those are a little more practical things. That's kind of how I went with the answers, but I think you have to take some steps, and you have to push organizationally to do that. I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of that, but
I think that's super helpful.
Carrie,
Wayne, please.
Carrie, I'd like to make a couple of comments here, drawing on my life's experience.
Please do.
Two things that I have learned that I think are very important. it was about 25 years ago when I was the chief academic officer at Roberts, and they went under the title provost and all that, that I had the privilege of hiring the first full-time Black faculty member. We had some who were teaching courses as adjuncts from time to time, and I didn't have a position. I didn't have the money to simply fill that slot. I simply, and here's my language for you, I simply made it happen. I had to put together a few things to make it happen. And that faculty person, that was a good hire. He is still on the faculty at the college some 25 years later. But I'm just trying to share with you that sometimes when you're in a position of leadership, as many of you are, you have to simply make a bold move. And if this is where your heart is, as Doug has, you just simply have to go there and make it happen. And however, whatever it takes. And that broke the ice. Literally, that broke the ice. And now I'm delighted to see the kind of diversity we do have at the college. Then from my experience at the seminary as the founding dean, and Doug was part of this, it wasn't just me as the dean, but the faculty made a decision and commitment. And some of you who have been students there, you have been party to this. You have experienced this. We made a commitment that we were going to respect every single person who walked through the door. And that included students of all genders, all denominations, all colors, and so forth. And we were able to create a culture at the seminary that in fact reflected that commitment. And it was intentional, as that word has been used here, but that it was a matter of developing a culture where there was respect given to each individual in terms of what they brought in the door, by way of color or theological position or denominational affiliation or gender and all of the rest. And some of you, I'm talking to some of you who have been part of that, and you can confirm it or deny it, but I think that that is what really resulted in the kind of numbers that President Porterfield was talking about at the seminary. And in turn, then the seminary had an influence on the college in terms of the diversification of faculty and staff, but also then the student body at the college. And so I'm trying to draw on my own experience to share with you a couple of things that I learned through that process. And I'm so affirmed at this point in my life to see what has developed at both the college and the seminary in terms of diversification. And as it is now being carried forward by President Porterfield, Vice President Darrell Bell, Dean Douglas Cullum, etc.
Yes, thank you, Wayne.
I would add that the love of the students of variety of color, position, believing was genuine. It wasn't just for recruitment or to increase our numbers. It was because we truly loved them and they were our friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Darlene, for adding that. Torrance and Laquana, I saw you unmuted for a moment there. Were you wanting to jump in?
Yeah, I appreciate these discussions. One of the things I teach this in my courses, and exactly what Doug and Deana said ring true to me. The advantage that we have as Christians is that we understand that these are matters of the heart, and that just making people feel that they're human and that they're a part of life. It really starts there. But the challenge is that we're dealing with fallen humanity, and we kind of think selfishly. And so what happens is that we have to work through those heart issues. And just responding to the questions that you asked, Carrie, I think one of the things that we also have to understand and appreciate is that when there's diversity, there is an element of problem solving that improves.
Yes.
There is a broadening of the educational experience, because when we're limiting people's experience in terms of their backgrounds and in terms of things that they know, we really stunt their growth as far as students are concerned, and even as professors. The other thing I would say in terms of how to make some of these things stick, just as Deana said, is that we have to make sure that they're part of our strategic objectives, and that they're being that we're monitoring the success rate of how we're meeting those objectives. And hiring is one of those things. But I would also say that there are elements of culture that we also need to be aware of, and that includes, what do our images look like? What does the representation look like in terms of the people who are in front or who are demonstrating leadership? What are some of the different symbols that reflect? And I have a new lower appreciation of that word inclusivity because of what Doug just said. But what are some of those symbols that say that this is an inclusive culture, for lack of a better term, Doug? And accepting of people who look like me or look like someone else. And so, I would just encourage this group, and I really appreciate this dialogue, because what it does require is planned action, accountable action, and hard change.
Thank you so much, Torrance. I'm going to be asking one last question to our special guest, but Carol, I did see that you were unmuted. Did you want to pop in a comment before I ask my final question to our panelists?
Yes, thank you. Just in response to what Wayne shared, I came out of cohort 4 from Northeastern Seminary, and we were a large cohort, and I would say we were, I'm throwing a statistic out there, 50% diversity, and we reflected the kingdom of God. And if I were to see any of the people from my seminary, from my cohort, we love each other as brothers and sisters in the Lord in such a powerful way. And you can't manufacture that. When we came in, we were all coming out of our culture, out of our place of worship, and uncertain about our future or what we were going to do. But we were completely authentic as to what we were bringing into the room. And so the experience was the richest form. I really felt like we reflected the kingdom of God. And that is what I would wish for the whole world, to be able to have lived that way. That is, and so I just wanted to say, yeah, it's happening. It was happening then. I see it at Roberts. I see it at Northeastern. It's the real deal. People really love each other. Their humanity is there. And it just needs to get bigger, but it has to be intentional.
Yeah. Thank you for testifying to what was shared, Carol. And Gail has dropped a wonderful comment in the chat, sharing that we also need to think about what resources we promote are the authors on our course required list from diverse backgrounds, or who's writing the songs we sing in our churches. So even the resources we provide. I know before I ask my last question, I know we have folks that are on specific task forces at their companies about this. I see, Lauren's dropped in a comment. I don't know if Lauren or Mike or Jessica want to share at all about some of the initiatives, or Heather at their companies. Is any of this resonating, or is there anything you would add from your experience? Lauren, I see you've got your mic off. Go ahead and share.
Yeah, I've been recently asked to serve on our global task force relative to the importance of diversity. I would tell you that we haven't met yet as a group. It's just been finalized, but those that I'm going to be serving with are the top leaders of our company. And I think the good news is that the top leaders of any company recognize the need for change and or movement. And when it's sensitive in nature, social in nature, cultural in nature, I think it's even more imperative. And so what I'll be looking forward to is really understanding how authentic the collaboration is going to be.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, not judging, not looking through the lens of expectation, but more so enthusiastic about the conversation. And so I'm very blessed that I was able to participate with this evening, because it'll give me a good avenue for discussion that's unique to me as not only a leader, not only as an alum, not only as a Christian, but more importantly and most importantly, as a human. So I appreciate all of you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to learn and to expand and grow as always. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation at my workplace.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. And I think that idea of authentic collaboration that was mentioned by Carol and that you put there in the chat is really helpful. Heather, I see you've got you're ready to share with us, so go for it.
Yeah, just one comment that I was thinking through the different attributes too is, you know, as an organization is putting the metrics around too, it also definitely shows when they have financial backing for diversity initiatives. Like, you know, it takes funding, I guess, to do certain things, whether it's from the hiring front, making sure holding positions open, as Deana had alluded to, or I was just nominated co-chair of our Women's Inclusion Network in the Greater Toronto Area. And there's events that we hold, and there's things that we do that are, you know, our time is money as consultants, and not only the actual events and things that, so, you know, it really takes, like, as you look at companies and study organizations that are truly committed to this, is not just metrics and things like that, but they're actually, you know, able to kind of set aside budgets to increase diversity topics and that around it. But yeah, so this is something not only that I'm excited about from, you know, a perspective of a woman, but also embracing as my team as a leader, and constantly kind to figure out what are the perspectives of my team, and, you know, am I drawing that else out? Am I recognizing the differences and in thought and background and all of that?
Yeah, and sometimes it requires sacrifices, right? So it might be holding a position open longer than is comfortable. I think about one of the things that motivated me from stepping away from the previous position I had was needing to make space for, you know, I'm thrilled that I was replaced by a woman of color. And I think she'll do a better job than I ever could, because she's going to be able to connect with students that I could never connect with. And that excites me. And that was part of what made it easier to step away and take a risk and try something else myself, was to know that I'm making space for someone else to grow and create an opportunity. Sometimes we need to create opportunities so people can grow and step in somewhere where there might not have been space. So thank you, Heather, for sharing your perspective on that, for sure. So I want to make sure I respect our time. So I'm going to ask our last question of our panelists. And I will say that all four of us from the seminary are planning to stick around when we're done. So if, you know, when we officially close, if you feel like, I really wanted to talk about this more, know that we're going to stay here for a while. I just want to make sure that, like, you know, I saw Heather with that little one on her lap, you know, like some people got to put little kids to bed and, you know, might need to put themselves to bed. So I'm going to ask my last question. And some of this has come out already in discussion, but it's going to give, you know, our leaders a chance to just hit on anything that maybe they wanted to say they didn't get to. All right. So for Deana and Doug, this will be your last chance to kind of pop in anything you didn't get to say. But, you know, looking at the history of the seminary, you know, what is our history of commitment to diversity, or practical steps that we've taken toward inclusion? Sometimes I think it's helpful to see, you know, a living model, and some of that has come out. But let's start with you, Doug, and then we'll wrap up with Deana.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. So I think a lot of this has come out. Wayne jumped in with a lot of the founding era stuff, and Carol's testimony there was right on target, and thank you for that. So what I have in my notes and what Torrance said, and it's almost as though he were reading over my shoulder, looking at what I wrote down. So I'm thinking, man, I've got to find my reaction here and go thumbs up for Torrance.
Yes, Torrance.
And by the way, you can change the skin tone on your reactions on Zoom. I just want you to know that, if it matters to you. So
you don't see yourself as like a yellowy orange, right?
I do not see myself as yellowy orange, and I just want to, you know, there's lots of ways that white people get offended. It's unbelievable. You know, we had a speaker in College Chapel several years ago who simply made an offhand comment about, you know, they do make these wireless ear microphones in something other than ivory. That's all he said. And there was quite a bit of reaction from certain people in the audience to realize that, you know, an organization that wants to be diverse only buys one color of those microphones. Just so I think that the small things do matter.
It's a great example,
in
Doug.
the
I
big
love
picture.
that. Yeah.
But back to the question, the real question.
No,
You know,
but
if
that's a
something
great
if
example.
something is central, then as everybody has said, it has to be intentional sooner or later. I mean, otherwise it doesn't stay central. You have the intentionality is the proof that something is actually central. And therefore, the things that we've heard about around hiring practices and around teaching practices, you know, the syllabi that Gail mentioned, that's a regular rhythm of what we do in syllabi preparation, is ask the question, are the only voices that would be heard on this topic white males, for example? Aren't there others that also rise to the level of being heard that could represent somebody's tradition coming in? And then strategic initiatives. And so the strategic plan that Northeastern Seminary is on right now, we're coming into the last year of it, you know, strategic initiative number 1 is to embody diversity.
Yes.
And embodying diversity isn't merely tokenism. It is getting the right people at the table and speaking the right, and having the opportunity to speak into what the organization is doing. And that's an ongoing process. I cannot say that we're there yet. You know, we're not fully where we need to be, but we have to have a strategic initiative to try to get there. Yeah. So a few years ago, when we were replacing a longtime faculty member, we had going into that search, we had created goals for faculty searches, which included gender and race ethnicity inclusion. And I thank God that the 3 finalists, on every one of them on their own merits coming into that, we had an Indian and an African and a Korean. Those were our 3 finalists. Those were the ones we brought to campus. And it turned out that we hired the Indian. He ended up leaving after 13 months because there are certain people in the market that are hard to keep.
Yeah, because he's amazing.
And as he left the door, the door to leave, he blessed us with saying, "Do you know that this person is studying with N.T. Wright right now? Why don't you contact him?" And Dr. Esau McCauley wasn't doctor yet, but I hired him on a retainer contract so that when he finished in St. Andrews, that he would come to Northeastern Seminary. Now, Esau is now at Wheaton. So back to, I think, was it Heather who raised the question, you know, there's got to be some funding to be able to keep the people you need. And so we continue, the intentionality is critically important. And just most recently, to replace that position that I just described, our faculty, to their credit, put a moratorium on the faculty search because we didn't have sufficient diversity in the finalist pool, and said we'd rather wait than hire if we do not have diversity in the finalist pool. So, I mean, so the intentionality is what I want to underscore in that. So that's some of the things we're doing, but I have to say we're in the midst of it. We are very, very grateful for our 42% African-American student body. And what happens around the table is richer than it's ever been. But back to what we actually do, our core mission is that without that diversity from both the student body and the faculty, we are actually miseducating people. Part of accentuating relevance means to prepare people for the world in which they're going to serve. And the world in which they're going to serve isn't all white and all evangelical. It's a bigger world than that. And so we are actually doing a disservice to our students if we do not make better progress on this question. So I think that's all I need to say there. Thank you.
It's excellent. Thank you so much, Doug. I told Deana she's going to get the last word. So Darrell, that means if you want to sneak one in, it's right now.
I'm good. Thanks.
When Carrie sent the question, it talked about our history of the seminary's commitment to diversity. And I just have to end by talking about our founder, because we're going to be starting our 155th year as an organization, which includes the seminary and Roberts Wesleyan College. And our founder back in the 1800s really had an unwavering anti-slavery stance. And he also was an advocate for the equal rights of women, and which, by the way, today was the 100-year anniversary of the vote. By the way, just want to put that out there. Just a little tag. But here's what's important about B.T. Roberts and that is in our founder, and we have individuals from the Free Methodist Church here as well. But when he founded Chili Seminary, his commitment was to an educational organization, institution that would embody these beliefs, both scripturally and in society. And that is the foundation on which we stand. And so as a seminary, as a college, our commitment goes back more than just a year or 2 years or 10 years or 50 years. It goes back 154 years into the founding of who we are. And for B.T. Roberts, he absolutely believed that this was what the Bible called us to. Right. And there are other things that he also believed that we stand on. But in this area of diversity, he believed that in this piece of the humanity that Doug talked about, that God's image was reflected in every single person placed in our midst and on this earth, and that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to help educate women and men to be transformed so that they then can transform this world with these types of perspectives and beliefs. And so I just can't go the night without saying that it is in our DNA, and we've stepped away from it at times and we've come back to it at times. And I just want to say my commitment as president is that we will stay committed and anchored in it, at least, for the future of who we are, because it is at the center of what we are called to do as educators at the seminary and at the college.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deana. I appreciate your commitment to that. Well, and I'm seeing applause from some of our folks in response to your comments. And I appreciate, Doug, how you shared that one of the challenges is that you have to, as Heather said, you have to put money behind these priorities, right? You have to invest in them. And so with that, I'm going to throw it back to you, Deana.
Yes. So I just want to say thank you again. And we're going to be here. We like to kind of hang out on these Zoom calls, and those that want to talk a little bit more. And I know there is just a wealth of expertise on this screen that I'm looking at. And some of you who haven't even spoken yet. And I know some of your backgrounds, and I know what you have brought to your organizations and what you can bring and contribute in this conversation as well. So if you want to stay on after this conversation, I invite you to do so, and we will linger with you. But tonight really is about casting a vision for the seminary and sharing that vision. And many of you are partners with the seminary, and I want to say thank you for that. And there are some of you here that this may be your first entree into what the seminary is doing. You may have come through the college side. And we want to just make sure that you know that there's an opportunity to support the work of the seminary, to help encourage our students, and to make sure that we continue to not only do events like this, but to fully educate a community in a way that God's called us to do, right? And to make a difference back in the community, in the church, and in the local community in how we serve. And so I just wanted to share quickly with you that we have a Northeastern Circle program that allows you to partner with the seminary to be able to help us scholarship students and continue the ministry and the work that we do. It's a $500 commitment annually, and what it does is it gives you some benefits too. I'll just tell you that. You get a few benefits where we have some newsletters and some updates that we keep you connected with. Also some opportunities for events, especially when we're out of COVID. We have some events at the President's house that you would be invited to, and some opportunity to engage in some different ways. But I want to personally invite you to join us and pray about being a circle member for the seminary. And Carrie, I know, has talked to some of you about that, and she will follow up again with that. And in the chat, she has put a link that if you're interested in finding out more about what it means to be a circle member at the seminary, that you can follow that link. And I think if I know her well enough, she'll put the link that even allows you to give tonight if you'd like, because that's
I did. I'm a fundraiser in the middle of a pandemic, so I have put, if you're saying, wow, I really respect what Northeastern Seminary is doing regarding diversity, it's one of the reasons that I choose to work here. I was, Carol talked about being in cohort 4. I was cohort 8 for my master's, and it was transformative to be surrounded by people who were unlike me when I was learning. It changed me. And now I'm back at the seminary, not just working, but in my doctorate. And it's so refreshing to be in a room full of people who are not like me, and it stretches me and grows me. And if you want to help us continue to make sure that our classrooms and our faculty offices and our administrators stay diverse, we invite you to invest and help us make that a priority, because it's our commitment. It's our genuine commitment. Also, I want to share, as well as we're going to linger tonight, and Deana, thank you again for letting people know that, I want to share that we have 2 new mini classes coming up in September. So if you enjoyed learning about diversity tonight, I'm actually going to be teaching a brand new mini class in September on women's journey into ministry and leadership. That's going to be open to the public. So I'm actually dropping the link in right now to the chat. This is a link that you can share with anyone. So if you want to share it around with your company, your organization, your family, your church, yourself. I'm teaching a class called Women's Journey into Ministry and Leadership. It's a free online mini class. So it'll be 4 weeks. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited. This is what my dissertation is about. And so I've been putting a lot of time and effort into it. And my dissertation builds on actually Dr. Porterfield's dissertation. So it's really exciting. And then also another one of my coworkers, Dr. David Carr, is going to be teaching a mini class called Reading Luke in a Polarized World. Going to be so relevant. After I'm done teaching mine, I want to take his. And his class, so the link that I provided for mini classes through Northeastern, you can get to my Women's Journey class or to David's Reading Luke in a Polarized World. By the way, these are going to be offered every other month for the next school year. So you could take mine and then take David. You can take mine in September and David's in November, or take David's in November and mine in January. But we found this be, as Deana said, we like to get together. We love that, but it's harder to do during COVID. So we found these mini classes to be a wonderful way to stay connected. And gosh, it means so much to be able to welcome people from all across the country and around the world. That's my hats off to our Canadian friend there with Heather, who I think is, she's probably putting someone in bed right now, which is why she's got her camera off. But anyway, so we invite you to be a part of future classes and continue to learn with us. What you experienced tonight gave you a good taste of what those classes will be like. We learn from experts and we learn from each other. And it's a really, rich experience. So as we wrap up, I just want to give our special guests a chance. Doug is going to close us in prayer, and then we'll give a chance for our special guest to just wish you a good night. So Doug, please, would you close us in prayer?
Sure. Just let me say first, thanks to everybody for coming again. It's great to see you, and thank you for being here and taking this time out of your evening tonight. Let's pray as we depart. Thank you, Lord, for the conversation tonight. We pray, oh God, that you might use it in our own lives in ways that would honor and glorify you, that would strengthen our relationship to other people. I pray, Lord, that you would help us build an even greater aspiration to break down all the barriers we can between ourselves and others. And I pray then that you would give us the grace and strength to fulfill the aspirations that you embed in our hearts and in our lives. Pour out your blessing upon each person here, on their homes and families, and the work that they do. In Christ's name, amen.
Darrell, final words from you?
Just want to thank everyone again for being here with us tonight. And thank you for your consideration of making an investment in just ministry moving forward. We really do appreciate that. And again, we'll be praying for you and your families. Just ask that God just cast a hedge of protection around you all and keep you safe and healthy.
Thank you, Darrell, so much. Deana.
Just thank you again. And I look forward to lingering if anybody would like to linger.
Yeah, so please don't feel kicked out. We'd love to chat with you more. For those who need to sign off, thank you so much again for spending a little more time in Zoom with us. It was wonderful to be with you, and thank you for your support. And if you have questions, you want to learn more about investing in the work of Northeastern, I'd love to chat with you, and you all have my contact info since I invited you here. So it'll be great to stay in touch and talk more. So thank you again for coming. Have a wonderful evening. Blessings on you, and thank you for the work that you are doing to promote diversity and inclusion in your world. It matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Thank you for coming. Okay, I see a question. I see a question there. Yes, Gail, go ahead. Ask your question. We're in the bonus round now, so.
That's right. That's right. How have you dealt with the pushback and resistance, oftentimes from those who have the power, who are resistant to share their power for whatever reason? How do you lovingly yet boldly deal with people who are resistant to change that need to happen?
Well, I see Daisy, Doug, and Deana all with their mics ready. I'm going to ask you first, Daisy, if you would like to respond to Gail, or if you had a question that you were going to ask.
I had a similar experience with a colleague who was very resistant and just made very inappropriate comments and didn't want to go to any of the diverse trainings that we offer in City Hall, etc. I have to say that I think part of it was my own convictions as a Christian to approach her and just have conversations about things that we both had in common, and just begin to talk about things that I hope would give her an aha moment where she realized, oh my gosh, we actually have more in common than we have different. And one of the comments that she made actually was during Hispanic Heritage Month, where we put up posters and she took my poster down. She said that didn't belong there. And I put it back up and she said it didn't belong there. And I said, okay, I need to have a conversation. And we did. And I have to say that I don't know if she's had a change of heart, but her approach to I felt towards me has been different. And I'm finding that these conversations are difficult, and I just have to approach it with with some grace and trying to just help people get to know me, Daisy. And with that, you get to know a little bit about my culture and who I am as a Latina woman, and even a little bit about my own background in Christianity, because I've been through formal churches and very strict parents, and then things happen. And my father now is he calls himself a charismatic. So I had to do it with conversations. And I also, one of the reasons why I muted my mic was because I wanted to share something that I had to share with Doug a long time ago. Doug, I don't know if you remember it, when you were talking about financial backing to these conversations. I had heard a long time ago, and it still resonates in me, is that they made a comment and they said, budgets are moral documents, and they speak loudly to what we want to invest in. And that speaks to an organization. So that's what came to mind when I heard about the financial backing.
Thank you for that, Daisy. And we might have others that want to respond to Gail. I'm going to throw it to Malik because he's got a question and needs to log off soon. So I want to make sure he gets to ask that. But Gail, I'm going to have that in the back of my mind so that if others want to respond to it, they can. Okay. Thank you for being patient. Malik, please share what before you have to hop off.
Thanks, Carrie. This was originally for Darrell, but I see Herb's on, so he can answer too if he wants. But I wrote it down. I said I've been the only person of color in a professional setting, and it can be uncomfortable at times. I know Robert strives to be a diverse organization, but from my recollection, there isn't much diversity at the director/VP level. Can you elaborate on what it's been like? I know for me at times it's been uncomfortable, and I felt as if I've had to work twice as hard to be better than the next person and improve my worth in the organization.
Darrell, would you mind speaking from your experience to that? I know you kind of opened with that earlier.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a lot of weight to carry, but whenever I realized that in my professional career that my trajectory was high, that I was doing it for young men like Malik, to show that there is a way and a path forward to being in those positions. And, it's the way I've always seen it is I don't feel because I'm an African-American that I'm entitled to those positions, but, that my performance speaks for itself, and that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to advocate for myself when I see, other professionals that, maybe young white professionals that are getting those opportunities and experiences. And you can go in there, you could do it in a very diplomatic way. And I've had times in my career before where I've had to go into leadership and say, hey, look, when it comes down to me, it's be patient. But when you look at X, Y, and Z, they're getting opportunities. And if you look at our numbers compared to each other, I'm blowing them out of the water. So why am I having to be patient where others are being basically handed these positions? So my advice to you, Malik, is just to continue to be strong and to realize that you're going to hit my age one day, and you're going to essentially, you're going to be doing it for, paving the way for young professionals behind you. So it's, be bold. I think that's one of the biggest things that I can say is to be bold. And if your performance speaks for itself, then, that's enough said. And just be very diplomatic. And, one of the things that I typed into the chat is that sometimes you have to educate people along the way. And there's a lot of people that don't realize that they hire out of a safe place. It's because what they're used to, and that because you may be different, you may be a little bit louder, or your fashion may be a little bit different. But it's okay. It's about me as a professional and about the work that I produce. So I would say that's, one of the biggest things. But I would love to hear from Herb, being a younger professional that is climbed in, his professional career.
Herb, would you be comfortable answering that question that Malik had about his perspective and his experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Darrell knocked it out the park with the answer, but I would just follow up and say, so outside of you just having to be, twice as good to get just as far as they say, you also, I think it's important to recognize there are going to be some places that have some structures and systems that don't allow you to excel and succeed. And so I think if you're in a place like that, which thankfully for me, because Darrell mentioned I've been able to work my way up, I'm in a culture that actually values the work that I do, But for you, You might have to get somewhere where you are celebrated and not just tolerated. I know you probably heard that before, right? And so there may be organizations that where you go into that space, they embrace what you have to offer and also accept you for your unique perspective as a Black male, right? And there's some organizations throughout our country in the world that won't value that. And so I think that's going to be important to recognize when that's not the case, right? When they don't value what you bring, and that's okay. And then find a space where they do value that. Now, within the spaces where you are, it's also, I've learned to look at the opportunity and not just the obligation of being a Black man in a predominantly white space. I think you have an opportunity to educate and create change for people to where you might not see it immediately, but when you leave, people will be affected by that, you know? And so it's really, I think for many of us who are in these spaces, we have an opportunity to educate and create a platform and speak into spaces where other people like us may not have been. And so as draining as it is, because it can be tiring, you know, I think you definitely should lean on what you can bring and how you can educate and give people resources. And they might not be receptive to it immediately, but I think if you continue to speak, they eventually will hear what you said, or you planted the seed, right, for them to later on understand what you're trying to say. So that's all I would add to that.
Thank you for that, Herb. What do you think, Malik? Is that helpful?
Very helpful. Thank you. I think for my organization, it's not the organization as a whole. It's just more so like one bad apple or one person who doesn't see where I feel like I'm always having to tell them what I'm doing or how it's being done. I'm always having to prove, you know, my worth. And I've been there, 2 years now. So it's kind of like, when are we going to get past that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to that is it's really important to find champions within your organization that can help you to you know, move forward in certain lights, or that will allow for you to use your voice and that'll actually listen. So I think that's very important, is identifying champions within your organization as well.
Yeah, and some voices you need to make louder and some quieter in our heads, right? Because some people want to make themselves really loud, and they'll, you know, that one person that keeps coming at you, that's a voice you need to minimize as far as how much weight you give it in your head. Because, you know, sometimes we give too much weight to the wrong voices. And I think, like Darrell is saying, the ones that are the champions, let those be the voices that speak loud and clear in your mind and your heart. And some people we need to kind of, you know, dismiss. I see Torrance has a comment here. He says the hardest place to make those changes is in our houses of worship. Or maybe this is from you, Laquana. Yeah. You're sitting there, so do you want to throw in a thought?
Yeah, I just was thinking, I just wish that the church led this effort, right? Understanding that a lot of the division and the divisiveness has a long-rooted tradition and heritage back to the slavery and that idea of white supremacy and how, you know, we have to keep you separated from us, we remain pure, and has really kind of set the culture. And it started in a lot of cases, you know, and has maintained its, I guess, you know, it's something, it's fire as a result of churches not being representative of the very thing Doug talked about, you know, that we are created. I just had this conversation with a person that I was on a leadership team with, and just explaining and expressing my, you know, thoughts that I am the image of God. And I have to teach my daughters, you are the image of God.
Amen.
And I want, and I told her, she's a white, my white sister in Christ, and I told her, I said, I need you, because she said, I don't see color, Laquana. And I say, when you say that to me, then you are denying my image, that God created me with this hair, with this skin tone, with this look, and the fullness of this body. And I don't want you to deny me God's image, because he chose to say, I want you to look like that. And all over God's world. And I want our churches to embrace that idea that there's some deep-seated rootedness that evangelical churches, particularly that were predominantly headed by white males, who has held on so tightly to this idea of a deep rootedness of this ugly sin. And so, you know, one last comment and I'll be finished. Not God, but one of the things that I oftentimes think about, how I don't want to be too emotional about it, but I just wish that the churches knew that the Holy Spirit's power and his presence is available for us to stand, right? And no government, no educational institution, economic institution or situation, I mean, those things do have, and political institutions, they have power. And but we have the Holy Spirit. Why are we so afraid to deal with this, right? And I just don't understand why it's just always put on the back burner when it comes to churches, when it comes to our Christian brothers and sisters just standing up. The hypocrisy is just, and we see why our young people are going, like, we don't want to be a part of this hypocritical movement. You're not loving like Jesus, right?
That's for sure. It's not attracting them. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, LaQuana, and know that I'm so grateful for what I learned about God through you.
Carrie, would you mind if I add something to what LaQuana has said?
Please.
I would say that there's a great intentional move is to attend a Black church. And I think that white people would find that African Americans are much more open to communicating than the other way around. And I don't mean to put anybody down. I'm not putting anybody down, but they are. And I also don't mean to say they, that's my experience. The level of fellowship and acceptance is very high. And I learned something from a gentleman named Elijah Summers, who's a Black student at the University of Montana. I was out there in February before the whole COVID thing came about. And it was to dedicate a space to Lorraine Hansberry to commemorate the 60th anniversary of A Raisin in the Sun. And he led the ceremony. And one of the things he said is, it's great that we're dedicating it was like an interactive space to Lorraine Hansberry, who was a great woman. It would be nice if we were dedicating a whole floor, or how about a whole building, and
we're just getting started, right? There's so much work to be done.
We're about, I don't even want to say a percentage, but we got along maybe that 1% of whites who go to Black churches, that might describe where we are. But the good news is we got a long way to go, and a long journey, a joyful journey, and a journey of growth and power and change. So, I'm looking forward to that. And I would also point out that the U.S. News and World Report says that Williams College is the #1 liberal arts college in the country. Well, guess what? They celebrated the 60th anniversary of A Raisin in the Sun with a week-long packed performances in rural Massachusetts. So, maybe we can take the lead from them a little bit. And, the 65th is going to be here before we know it. Let's see how we can celebrate that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for challenging us, Andy. Deana or Doug or Darrell, were you, or I see you, yes, Wayne, I see you have your microphone ready.
I wanted to share another challenge, as it were, with my colleagues at this college and seminary, but others of you who are still lingering. And that is, increasingly, I'm feeling this personally because of where I'm at in life, that there is a vertical dimension to diversity as well as a horizontal dimension. We've largely been talking about the horizontal, gender, color, and the like, but there's also a vertical dimension in terms of age. And I'm at the age now where I know folk who are elderly, who really have been put out to pasture, out of sight, out of mind, and yet they have a lot of wisdom to share, and they would like to be more part of the church, part of board sessions, part of communities and the like, but they're discriminated against. I mean, really, that's the language. I don't experience that personally so much, but I do know that there are fellows, Christians, believers, people I know well in the same age bracket that feel that. There's the other side of it, and here's where my passion really is at this point in my life, and that is to reach down to younger levels and to, as Darrell more or less said, champion those people and bring them up and bring them into community, into leadership roles and the like. And I know of young people who are very gifted, bright and gifted, and even in their teens still, and who are eager to be making contribution to the church and to our various organizations, but we kind of discount them as well.
Right.
They're not old enough.
They're not ready.
They're not ready, and so forth. And yet we should be bringing them in and mentoring them and bringing them along and supporting them and so forth. And so this is part of where I'm at in life, and I think maybe a bit of a calling God's placed on me personally, to reach out to my peers and encourage their involvement in life, but in terms of community and contribution in that way, but also then to reach to the younger people and to put my support under them and to pull them up and into positions of ministry and leadership. And I have that opportunity, and I'm taking advantage of it wherever I can. I can also tell you that on many of the boards, and I do serve on too many boards, quite frankly, but when I talk about younger, it's often bringing middle-aged people onto the board to replace all the retirees that are holding the seats. I'm one of those retirees, you understand. But man, that's tough work, I can tell you, in the context of the board sessions, to bring on younger people who aren't as experienced as us older people. Well, no, they're not as old as we are, but we need their perspective. Desperately need their perspective. The world isn't just made up of old people. It's made up of middle-aged people and young people as well. We're talking about diversity of perspective. We're missing out on those perspectives. So that's my appeal. I'm getting to preaching. I know I sound a bit like Doug Cullum now, I think. but I'm quite, as you can see, I'm quite passionate about that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that perspective with us, Wayne. So appreciate you. And I will say that you practice what you preach, and I appreciate your investment. I can say personally, I appreciate your investment in me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam.
Yeah, so Laquana was talking about the church, and I would be interested in her opinion, and Darrell and Deana and Doug's opinion. And so so Laquana, I oversee churches in Western and Central New York. Almost all of them white. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? But I've got three different things clashing in my, just trying to figure out how these come together. And one is, somebody said, it might've been Darrell, I don't know, but one was asked, how do you help people succeed here? So I'm asking the question, how do I help people of color succeed, particularly pastors, okay? Mm-hmm. So I've got that. And then I've got the recognition that I want people to succeed, but I also have the recognition that breaking barriers sometimes breaks people and sometimes breaks churches. And I've seen that with women, right? So I go into a church to talk about a new pastor, and I say he or she, and I'm sure my predecessor said he or she, but suddenly when I say it, the anxiety rises in the room. And I have to figure out, is the anxiety so much that I'm going to break this church or break a woman by sending her in? And if in that case, like it's not a win, right? So I'm wrestling with that. And even though the anxiety rises with women, the anxiety rises even more when I talk about people of color, just being real honest, right? So then I have that, and then I have your statistic about 28% of Black believers will even step into a white church. And I'm thinking about my friend Jackie, who has just said there's no way she'd ever go back to a white church because it just makes her tired, right? And I get that. So
I'm said, right? It's exhausting. It's
exhausting. You know, she said, I'm working with white people all the time. I need a safe place on Sunday, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, how do these things come together so we can better reflect the image of God and the kingdom of God? But this is the practical place where I'm living right now. So any thoughts you have? I mean, we're trying to lay the foundation in some sort of big picture ways, but the practical stuff is killing us. So.
Thank you for your question, Pam. Darrell, I know you have to hop off shortly. Do you have anything you want to share quickly before I throw it to Doug and Deana in response to Pam? Or if you had something that you wanted to share in response to Gail that you didn't get to earlier?
No, I don't have anything else I want to add. I'm so grateful to be able to have these conversations. It's just so critical. And again, I know I've already acknowledged President Porterfield, but I just want to thank you again for making this a priority at Roberts Wesleyan College and Northeastern Seminary, because it's evident, that things are moving in the right direction, and we're just bringing alongside so many people that are passionate about this conversation. So I'm really excited to see, what's to come down the road with all the work that we're putting in right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Darrell. It's great to have you be part of our conversation, and it's an honor to work for you and with you.
And thank you for putting this on, Carrie Starr. I really appreciate your energy and everything that you brought to this conversation today.
It's been an honor. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Deana and Doug, keep the conversation flowing, please.
Yeah, so Pam, I want to make sure I fully understand. And so I think, the greatest challenge sometimes becomes the greatest risk, but the greatest reward. And so I think when we stand in front of I can speak organizationally. I've been on the staff. My husband's been on staff at a church, and we never even addressed this issue at the church that we actually served on staff with, right? So, but organizationally, I think how it can feel risky because you don't want to set somebody up, right, in a way that there's going to be work for any person. I mean, when Darrell and I were talking about his possibility of coming to Roberts and Northeastern, never forget, we were walking down the sidewalk and I just said, Darrell, you know what this will mean, right? Because you're going to be the first. And when you're the first or the second or the third, probably, right? Or until it becomes commonplace that you don't even think about the fact that there's a first or a second or a third, right? You're going to carry a weight that's greater than anybody else. And I know Darrell carries that, and he recognized that, and I recognized that. But I felt I couldn't even offer him a job till I said it out loud, right? Because I knew that's what was going to happen, right? And he's carried that with grace, and he gets questions that other administrators don't get, and people that trust him and feel comfortable with him go to him and share things that sometimes they aren't even comfortable yet to share with me. But because he's a vice president and they know that he has an open door, they're there. So I think when I think about the church and organizations, I think, Darrell had to be ready to come as the first administrator. I had to be ready to say, let's do this, right? I had to step out and say, we're going to do this. And he said, we are going to do this, and together support that as we go. I think we've had a good supportive relationship. And I think that he knows that I am here for anything that he has along the journey and be an encouragement for him. But it's recognizing that. I don't know how you do that in a church because if you're not in the church, to keep telling people this is where you're going. I don't know how, I mean, other than I can speak of it as a female leader, as the first female president. Now we had female principals of the high school, but the first female president, and it just changed immediately, right? I mean, things just changed. And so all of a sudden, it wasn't a question of if we needed a woman on the platform anymore, because you automatically had one, by the way. It was me. And so kind of changed the tone of it. But I think pushing through it. So I don't know that that's an answer to your question, other than I can't, I mean, I'm trying to think in my mind, if I was a superintendent placing a pastor, right? And somebody, an ethnically diverse pastor in a white majority church, what kind of support would you need to put around that person so that they could be successful, instead of spending the majority of their time carrying the burdens of what it means to teach a majority culture about diversity? Because that burden is heavy.
Very.
I'd like to just speak to that, because I've served in both the role at the college and the seminary as an administrator, but I've also served in the church as a conference superintendent, which is Pam's current title and role. And I can tell you, one of the big differences between the two is that, Deana, you are taking the lead over a group of employed staff and faculty. Okay, they are your key group, whereas Pam is working with a congregation of volunteers and laypersons who can choose to go to that congregation or leave that congregation or whatever. And it has nothing to do with her payroll.
Right.
Okay, so there is a significant difference between those two kinds of communities and engaging in leadership of the kind that we're talking about.
Yes, Herb, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to make sure I got the question correctly. Pam, could you just repeat that if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm looking for ideas. I have a real desire to see our churches. So I oversee churches in Western and Central New York, Free Methodist churches, and which are mostly white, or white African refugee. So that, I mean, that's sort of a different situation. And then a handful of multicultural churches. But the percentage of pastors we have who are people of color is pretty low. Is very low. So I'm trying to figure out, we actually have, because of our history and our heritage, we have people who are attracted to the Free Methodist denomination from NES. Great, awesome. And then it's a case of going, now what? And so I want to see them succeed. But that's the challenge, is how do I get them, how do I help them succeed, or how do I make sure I'm placing them in a place that isn't going to blow up, that isn't going to have everybody leave, which isn't going to help them, and it's not going to help the church. And so we're certainly doing foundational things with some of our training conference-wide, but that's a whole different situation than what happens at the local church. So I'm just looking for ideas of how to see more diversity in our context, which Doug is quite familiar with, so too. But yeah, but I think Wayne's right. I mean, there is a difference in volunteers. Yeah.
Pam, I wonder, Laquan, I know you've got to run, but I think Pam first asked you maybe to jump in on this. we didn't mean to sideline you. I'd love to hear it before you go.
I know, me too. I was like, oh, I want to capture that.
Well, I am in a predominantly white church, and those of you who know what Torrance and I worship and have been quite involved on the staff and on the board, and Torrance even preaches occasionally, or has in the past. And I can't remember who said, it's getting hard, right? To, be that family, and everything is directed towards you. Not sometimes, intentionally listening, but not acting. I don't know if that makes a difference. Like, you know, dear sister, I care and I'm concerned, but not necessarily acting on that concern and that care. And so I think, you know, Pam, well, for the church, sometimes that, you know, Torrance and I, we oftentimes say a lot of evangelical churches have gotten away from, this is again how Torrance and I kind of talked about this, have gotten away from the whole picture of God and who God is. And so sometimes they only want to focus on the gospel books because maybe they only see mostly love and, you know, inclusion a little bit, and, you know, God is okay. And it also allows people to kind of get a little puffed up and maybe even, you know, think now God owes them something because they've been good. I feel on a flip side of that, the way maybe at, you know, a predominantly African American church, and I'm just kind of going to bring that all together, where we were taught about the holiness of God. And you have to always humble yourself before God. And God is not just the New Testament, but it's the Old Testament too. And in the Old Testament, you get to know about the character of God. And the character of God is on display in the whole history and the stories of the people of Israel traveling through life and God dealing with injustice and with sin and with all of the things that we want to kind of gloss over now because we have to have a relationship with God that makes us feel good about ourselves. And so I think because we've kind of, you know, somehow marinated that and developed it and had that idea grow, when it's time for you to talk about the things that are unjust, because we're not, you know, relating to the fullness of God, then people are resistant. What do you mean? I'm a good person. Because now we see ourselves as good people because I'm doing all the good things. I love my neighbor, but there's something deeper about loving your neighbor if you know all about the holiness of God, right? So I think that we have just kind of maybe, and I think, I can't remember who said this, like on the flip side of, you know, kind of going to the Black churches, Torrance and I we was talking and was just saying how the Old Testament, we're not afraid to preach out of the Old Testament. I'm not gonna say, I don't know anything about who specifically I'm talking about, but where we came from, the Old Testament was on display about a holy God. And as a result of that, it made you understand your place, not your place in a white society, but your place in terms of your creator and how he created you. And so when it came to, and I'm not saying all Black churches are more receptive of others coming in, but you got to see other people when they come into your door, it's like they're equal to you in terms of the God's creation. But if you don't see that about who God is, because now you're equal to God somehow because God owes you a favor because you've done all these things, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of going all over the place, Pam, but you know, it may be just
you're hitting something. No,
you're diving. More biblical teaching. I mean, like digging in. Like, stop all this little frou-frou stuff. Like, talk about the holiness of God, because the holiness of God will help you tell the truth. And the Holy Spirit, that is the goal. The goal of the Holy Spirit is to lead you into all truth, right? That is the goal of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And so, anyway, I need to be quiet. I'm so sorry.
No, I think we're a holiness denomination, right? so it shouldn't be a problem. But I think you've hit on something, like even just the Facebook stuff that I'm dealing with out there in multiple churches with people putting stupid, insensitive, racist things on there and not even knowing it, right? And you go, how? And I think you've hit on something there. I've pondered that. Thank you.
No, thank you, Laquana. We appreciate you sharing your perspective. It was so valuable to have you here. Please don't feel stuck. But thank you. And Doug, thanks for grabbing Laquana, because that was on my radar as well. I appreciate that. And Pam, you have a hard job. You know, this is great. Great reminder for us to pray for you in your work. And thank you for, I know you had a long, full day of interviews and you've been staring at us. So, I mean, I'm just so grateful that you're here and you've hung in there with us.
I've appreciated this. I just, you know, I keep trying to dive in on this and trying to figure out how do we move things forward.
Not everyone's comfortable to talk about it candidly, right? I mean, this is what you've been working on, Herb, having these candid conversations and saying, we can't not talk about this because someone might be uncomfortable. Like this is again, as Doug shared, this is how we be human with one another is to acknowledge what we're experiencing. Wayne, I see you got your mic on, or Mike, Wayne and Doug, so I'll let you duke it out.
Well, I just wanted to give Pam encouragement, which you've already done. It is hard work. It's a very difficult job. And my sense is within the Free Methodist Church, and I'm just reflecting that, sharing with the others here, the leadership levels, I think, are on board largely, all the way from the level of the general church, the bishops and so forth, the superintendents and pastors and the like. Where we have a real challenge is with the lay level of membership within the church, where there's a culture that's been influenced by this dominant white evangelical sort of attitude on these matters and so forth. And how do you overcome that? How do you work through that? And Pam, all I can say, as one of your pastors, thank you for your efforts and just keep at it. I mean, that's really what all of us, we just have to do what little bit we can and keep at it. And it will change over time, but it's not going to change overnight and so forth. But we'll be praying for you as you move forward.
Herb, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something here, and I've had this thought for a while, but this might be the place to bring it up. And I may bring this up, and you may say, "Well, people have already tried this," but something I've been thinking about and having some conversation about with a few pastors is, I continually hear when I speak to people, especially in white spaces, that they may have or believe they have a passion to understand other people, but they truly have not had the opportunity to build a relationship with somebody who's of a different background than them, right? They really haven't been around people, haven't been able to connect. And so something I brought up to somebody once was, hey, what if for a year, every 3 months, we connect a church that is out in a rural area or a suburb and a church that is in the city, and we say, okay, we're going to bring our congregation to your church one time, and we'll bus people out, get them there, and vice versa. And then for half of the service, we'll preach from the ordinance that we're used to, whether it be Baptist or whatever it may be, and then for the other half, maybe this, right? And so, and it's not a situation where the church, one half of the church is filled with, other people from the city church, and the other half is filled with people from a rural area. But people are actually having a chance to build community and connect. And then organically, the stereotypes and barriers start to dissipate. And so that's something I was trying to speak to and talk out. And so we got a little bit of somewhere with that, but we didn't get far. So I was just wondering if, has something like that already been done? Could that be done? Are there barriers? And just, wanted to bounce that out now while we're on the subject.
Herb, I love that idea. And I think that you're onto something. The church that I'm a part of, the other church disbanded, but we had for several years had a partnership where we swapped worship services. We participated in the other, and they came to ours, and we, so we had this relationship. But the two things I would say around this whole question are, we need to take both a longer view and a broader view when we're thinking about the nature of diversity and its practice. And by a longer view, I mean, building a culture takes time. it took about 400 years for this problem to develop in this country, and before we got to be a country. This
And
is,
you know I'm not a patient woman, Doug.
I cannot respond to that right now, but
It's real, folks. It's getting real.
so it's changing a culture takes time as well. So a longer view, a long view can help us. A broader view is that sometimes I think we have a little bit of, I don't know if I should say it, but our room has gotten smaller, so I will, of what Eugene Peterson calls ecclesiastical pornography. We have this airbrushed image of what the perfect church ought to look like. And frankly, that's the church in Revelation of every nation, every tribe, and it's going to take that long to get there. Sadly, right? But we need to, our goal here is to actually try to approximate it to the greatest degree. And so by broader view, I don't think we are failures if we don't get to that image now. But how do we do things that, so the diversity that Herb is talking about, in the crossroads of Midwest America or downstate New York, we are not ever going to have a diverse church. It's just not going to happen because of the population base. But that diverse church could partner with the church 50 miles down the road and become an integral partner where they share life together, because every church is impoverished in some way. Pierce Church, which is right to my right hand here, may have a lot of financial resources it has in the past. It may not anymore, but when it partners with a congregation that may not have financial resources, it gains more than it gives, because it is frankly has been over the years impoverished in spirit. And when you have that kind of diversity that cross-fertilizes in authentic ways and begins incrementally to break down barriers, the first steps are sitting around tables or working side by side and having conversations. And when those conversations are had, you begin to realize this other isn't so other after all. We are the same. And so a longer view and a broader view. Because you don't want to rip new pastors apart. And the newest pastors get the hardest jobs because we have messed up pay scales. And so we can only, the hardest churches are the ones that pay the least. And so we can only send the youngest people, the freshest people there. You can't send Wayne McCowan there because he can't afford to go. Well, he can now, so I would ask him if I were you. But
or you send the women who can't find another job.
Well, that's right. I know that's exactly right.
Well, it's
so
the same with women.
I'll stop now.
Women get assigned to the hardest assignments, because they're the places that the men have the freedom to choose to pass over that problem.
Called glass cliff churches.
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay.
But if those churches were to actually begin to see the other, then it wouldn't be long until they would find that this isn't quite off the table.
Yeah.
And then there are certain places where you can do what Bishop, when I was on loan to United Methodist Church doing graduate work, Bishop Neil Irons in the Northern New Jersey Conference of the United Methodist Church, in that very, very urban, suburban area in New Jersey, said, in appointments, there are two things. We will always talk about fit. We will do our best to make a good fit. But there are two things that are off the table in the conversation, and that's race and gender. And those are non-negotiable. Those are not questions of fit. Those are questions of humanity. And we are a church that appoints all people equally because all people are equal. And so other questions of fit are important, but not those. So in some places that'll work, a hard line. In other places it can't work yet, because that's when you have a longer view.
I've sort of tried that, and I've watched people go,
So, Pam, this is probably something you've thought of, and I know it's probably, I don't even know if it's a good idea, but I want to say,
I'll take any ideas.
I want to say, take the people around the district and the conference that want a diverse church, go get us a diverse pastor, and let's mix it up and start a branch. And I know that messes up the other churches, but I mean, I'm saying it like I'll go as one of your planners.
I was gonna say, if you have an NES or Roberts student who's a church planter and willing to do the hard work, like Darrell was, right? Because it's where I would grab them in a heartbeat.
Right. Because I don't know if we could create the same thing in a church that's been here for 100 and some years, in its way. But I think it can be influenced by another church that grows and finds its way forward. But I think
there's a point of encouragement here, though, in another arena than that of color, and that is in terms of gender. Because we've broken the glass ceiling, so to speak, within the Free Methodist Church and in our own area, Pam, just in recent years. Significantly, you're part of that Deana at the college and so forth. And I have, in just the last month, I heard 2 absolutely fantastic women preachers and so forth. So I think now the churches are beginning to realize that women have something significant to offer that we have, as B.T. Roberts once said, half the church we kind of set aside here and let the men be the preachers and run the church and so forth. But now I think there's more openness, more acceptance, and more embrace of women, and it's not quite the same issue as it was. I mean, you're still front runners. You're pioneers.
Wait, you're progressive. I'm just going to say that. And
you're pioneers.
You're progressive.
In the other arena that Pam is grappling with, we haven't yet gotten to the point where we are with gender, with women.
Right.
But don't be discouraged, because I think you're leading us in the right direction, and we have, it taken a long time, as Doug says, but we finally have gotten to someplace here on the gender issue. It's still on the front end, I know, Deana. And we're aiming down.
I know I can be a guest speaker.
This color issue too. So hit the ball out of the park.
It's getting real here in the late hour. It's getting real.
I was gonna say, and I know I took up way longer than I expected to, but I really do appreciate the input. So thank you.
It's real. I mean, if our founder, right, of our denomination believes so deeply in these pieces, it's hard, one, to be at one of the schools that struggles to keep finding its way, and in the churches, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because we stand up and say what we're founded with, and how we make that change.
Yeah.
You used a term, and I've used it here recently a number of times as well. I think you're exactly right. It's in our DNA. It's not something we've come up with because it's a 21st century sort of thing, It's in the news, and it's what, this is a certain side of things. No, it's in our DNA. This is who we are.
Now we just have to actually be it.
Right.
And Pam, thanks for fighting the fight. And I'm so grateful, for all those of you who have stuck around for the bonus round here. Herb, I'm so glad that you could jump in to the later part of our conversation. Sure. I'm so glad you were here. And, we did record tonight's conversation. So
I know. Cut off the last part.
Cut off the end. Please.
See what I can do about that.
Patrick knows how to do that. He can help you.
We recorded. Oh my.
Well, I think the authenticity of the conversation is what makes it a game changer. And that's why people are afraid to talk about it, because am I going to say the wrong thing? And we do want to be mindful, right? The idea of microaggressions, it's real. And we need to be mindful of what we say and how we say it. But we also need to have the conversations. We need to respectfully ask the questions, and we need to stumble our way around so that we can grow and we can change and create that change. So I'm so appreciative of all of you. Everyone I'm looking at is in a leadership role and, you know, has like paved the way on this. So thank you for what you all teach me and for allowing me to stumble my way through a conversation with a lot of people that I think were really blessed by what happened here tonight. So thanks for giving your time.
Thank you, Carrie. Great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night. Blessings, everyone.